Were you divorcing all along? What was it that finally led to the demise of your relationship? As we explore what happened in your communication, or the lack thereof, you might discover that you were divorcing all along. When two people are unable to communicate, it's just a matter of time before things dwindle into nothing or blow up completely. You or your partner may have actually started the divorce process long before one of you finally called it quits, because of the toxic patterns that became habits in your interactions. Most people have no idea what communication even is, let alone how to do it effectively. Well over 90% of the problems that occur in relationships are the result of crappy communication. In this video, I'm going to teach you how to communicate effectively, how to communicate healthfully, as we explore 4 crucial elements of healthy communication. Then, we're going to look at what it is your responsibility to do in healthfully communicating and what it is the other person's job to do. In the very simplest terms, communication is simply the process of getting a message from one person to the next. And the more intact that message is when it gets to the other person, the more effectively we've communicated. What is the message that you're trying to send? And how on earth do you get the other person to receive it? And how do you receive a message effectively and in a healthy way when somebody else is trying to get a message to you? The 3 crucial elements that actually make up any message. This is so imperative, because so seldom do we stop and ask ourselves, okay, what is the message that I actually am trying to get to the other person? And so often when I'm in session with somebody, people will be telling me, something about a communication interaction or a conflict resolution moment that they had with somebody. And they'll say something like, man, and I just wish that they would have understood this. Or I was just so trying to get them to see this. And then I'll say, well, did you say that? And they'll say, well, not exactly. And so that's one of the interventions that I use a lot with people, is if you'll just step back and say, okay, what is it that I want them to get? What is it that I hope that they'll understand? In fact, one of the things that I have people do is I'll say, okay, so just imagine that you're explaining it to me. Because most of the time, when someone's explaining it to me, they're saying that. Well, this is what I was hoping to say. This is what I was trying to communicate. And if you stop and think about that and then present that, that's a really good place to start. So there are 3 elements that make up a message. There's an acronym, it's BFW. Those elements are the behavior that we're talking about, how I feel about that behavior, and why it is that I feel that way. If I only give you the liquid inside, just how I'm feeling, without the behavior that I'm talking about and why I'm feeling that way, I make it much more difficult for you to understand what it is that I'm trying to communicate. And what we do more often is to just talk about the behavior. You left your shoes in the living room, or you never listened to me, or whatever. And we leave out the crucial elements of how we're feeling about it and why it is that we're feeling that way. When you're the communicator, it is your job to get all 3 of those components, all 3 of those elements into the hands of the other person. I like to think about it as like a quarterback and a receiver. And when you're the quarterback, it's your job to get all 3 of those components to the other person. So often in communication, we're frustrated when the other person doesn't seem to be understanding what we're trying to say. And how often do you stop and ask yourself, well, am I throwing good passes? Am I doing my part to get the message to them? Because if you're like just, throwing the water at them, you're probably not making it very easy for the other person to receive the message that you're trying to send. It is imperative that we communicate even during conflict, even when we're trying to talk about something kind of sensitive or kind of dicey. It is still important that the other person feels like they matter to you. There are 2 fundamental needs that every single one of us has. And those 2 needs are to feel like we're valued. And especially like we're valued to the people that we're supposed to be valued to. And if you're my spouse, I have a very healthy expectation to be valued by you. And the second one is a sense of love and belonging. Do I feel safe? And that's how our brains assess them. You'll hear me talk a lot about these 2 things because almost everything comes back to this. Our brains assess the valuing as, do I matter? Do I matter to the people that I'm supposed to matter to? And secondarily, Am I safe? Am I emotionally safe with the people that I'm supposed to, that I should be emotionally safe with? The top of that list is your spouse. There is nobody that I should feel safer to, or that I should feel like I matter more to, than my spouse, and vice versa. There's nobody that should feel more valued by me or safe with me than my spouse. When you're communicating, how you do that is to share the BFW. Here's the behavior I'm talking about. Here's why I'm feeling this way, and here's what I'm feeling and why I'm feeling that way. And you know what? This isn't about our relationship. This is about, I still care about you. You still matter to me. This is about an issue. So, how do you receive a message well? How you receive a message well is to receive all three of those components. And on our subsequent videos, we break this down more in depthly, both on how to throw a good pass and how to receive a good pass. But in general, it's your job to receive all four of those components. When you're the receiver, when someone's trying to communicate to you, to stop and ask yourself, are you even paying attention? Are you ignoring them? Are you just sitting on your phone or your iPad or whatever else, staring at the TV or the ball game? Are you even giving them access to you, the time of day, for them to be able to get a message to you? So what happens when this goes well, and what happens when it goes poorly? When this goes well, we feel safe in communicating. We feel safe in sending and receiving messages. We feel valued and we feel like we matter. When this doesn't go well, like I said before, it is literally just a matter of time before it leads to the demise of a relationship or actually absolutely blowing it up. Because we cannot maintain the health and the connection and the safety in a relationship and in that primary attachment relationship if we're not able to communicate. It will, and probably did, lead to the demise of your relationship. So there are three things that I want you to really kind of learn and practice with this. Just little tips to help you be able to get better at doing this. I also want you to think back about what happened, the red flags that you might have missed in this process of communication previously. But there are three things that I want you to keep in mind. The first thing that you have to do is to overtly, explicitly identify who's the quarterback and who's the receiver. You come to me and say, hey, Dr. Slade, there's something that I would like to talk to you about. Then you're the quarterback. And you have what we call primacy in that interaction, in that conversation. And so then you get to go first, and it is my job to receive your message. I don't say, oh, I'm so glad that you brought this up because I've got 37 things that I'd like to talk to you about. I'm so glad you opened the door so that I could walk through it. No, whoever has the courage to bring an issue up gets to be caught first. And so that's the first thing I want you to do is you've got to keep in mind who's the quarterback and who's the receiver. The second thing that I have people do to help with this is to use some kind of object. In my office, I have a rain stick that I'll have people use. But you can use anything. I mean, again, back to the tumbler, you can use a tumbler, you can use, a water bottle or something. But if you have an actual object that the receiver holds, then as long as I'm holding this, I know that it's my job to receive your message. And what am I trying to receive? I'm sitting there thinking, okay, what's the behavior? What's the feeling? What's the reason why? I need to communicate that I care about what she's sharing with me. My side of it, I don't get to be the quarterback as long as I have the water bottle, as long as I have the conch or whatever you want to use, the rain stick. It's just an easy way to remember what role it is that you're playing, because getting confusion around, but I want to say, or I want to clarify, or whatever, that confusion about what your role is at any given time is one of the biggest pitfalls that disrupts healthy communication. Okay, so one of the questions that I get asked a lot, is what is this like? What does this look like for you and your wife? We've been married for almost 30 years, and I teach this. If anybody should be good at this, it should be me. And still, when we first start talking about an issue, we almost always do it poorly. One of us gets defensive, or one of us gets critical, and then we have to do the third tip that I want to give you. When this starts to break down, you want to pause, take a step back. You want to identify who the presenter is, who the receiver is, what role that I'm playing, and what role are you playing, and then come at it again. And there's a lot that can kind of go into taking a time out. There's a 24-hour rule that you want to be mindful of. But I just want you to know, have some grace. You're not going to be good at this. This is a skill like anything else. Most people are not naturally good communicators. It is not normal to communicate well. It's not normal to BFWC. It's normal to get defensive. It's normal to throw bad passes, to be critical. It's normal to stonewall. Healthfully communicating is a skill that you have to learn what to do, and then you have to practice it and practice it and practice it. But if you do, you can get better and better and better at it. And when you do, and as you do, it will just strengthen the connection in your relationship. It feels so good when you feel like you've actually been understood and the entirety of the message that you've been trying to send has been received, and that the other person actually cares about what you've been trying to communicate. Another point that I want to point out here is that it's not necessarily your problem. In fact, it's probably not your problem if you don't know how to communicate well. Most of us don't have this modeled well for us. Most of us don't have access to good information or how to actually learn how to do this well. But if you continue to do it poorly, then it's on you. It's probably not your fault that you don't know how to do it up to now, but it is absolutely your fault if you just stay there. It's one of my favorite things to think about is that more of the same gets you more of the same. If you keep doing what you've been doing, you're going to keep getting the same results. And if you go into your next phase of life doing the same things that you were doing that landed you here, what makes you think that you're not going to land here again? And so if you want different results in this next phase of your life, you've got to do differently. Learning how to do this well will help you avoid some of the most predictable red flags that are blowing up relationships right and left. So what I would love to invite you to do, if you want to learn more about this, I've created a series on, they're called the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse. What these are red flags or predictors of divorce. So click the link below to watch the first video in our series on the 4 Horsemen of Divorce, where we break down what it looks like to have criticism in a relationship so that you can learn what it is your job to do in order to increase the likelihood of you being understood and having your messages be received well.